I think that's one of the beauties of getting older, is that you become more like the ceiling of a cathedral. There's like 1,000 pieces and it takes years to make. So you're trying to get the whole. So I think with this cornucopia piece, what I'm really trying to think is holistic. And then there's the other side of me, which is more about that guttural, emotional take, you know? Keep it real.
These are the contradictions that kind of define Björk's remarkable journey. This punk rock kid born and raised in Iceland who found inspiration in the infinite vastness of nature. This voice who seeks companionship in the circuitry and technology of modern software. All of it wrapped up in this incredible performance, Cornucopia, which is the reason I got to sit down for the first on-camera conversation in more than 10 years with the GOAT.
I'm so happy to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you so much for everything. And obviously that's a broad statement, but you have given us so much over the course of your life. And I'm so glad that we've met again at this point where I feel like so much of your life's work is showing up in this remarkable film that feels like just an incredible embodiment of what matters to you and what should matter to us, Cornucopia.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it is kind of interesting because we did the first half of the film and the show after doing Utopia. The album came out 2017. So some of the songs I started writing straight after Vulnicura. So like January, I don't know, 2013 or whatever. Then COVID came in the middle. So we decided, okay, let's postpone the tour. And I did a whole new album. And then we decided to add the new album songs in it as well. And then when I sat down and we've done like a whole post-production now for a whole year, which is a new thing in my life. I'm always learning new things. And I was like, you know, fucking hell, it's basically 10 years of my life. It's from 2013 to like 2014, 11 years.
Yeah.
So it does span a lot of stuff and a lot of different things. And obviously, first you're doing it just more for the sort of cornucopia piece, but then you discover also that it does have an emotional curve as well, you know?
What did you learn by experiencing it after you had performed it? What did you feel different when you were watching it back?
Well, I was quite proud of, because we did the Vulnicura VR, and then we did like 7 different VR videos. And that's kind of has a pros and cons because the people who end up seeing the VR pieces are maybe sometimes some elite people who have the gear, you know. So I did pick some of the best pieces from that. So it ended up being like a selection of the avatars that I'd done with different directors, all the way from the Not Get avatar to the family avatar of Vulnicura, to, you know, the avatars of the Gate and of Utopia, and then, you know, and then Loss and Tabula Rasa, and then all the way till, you know, now, and with Nick Knight. And so basically there is like a sub-story in the film of avatars who are sort of like marionettes or like sort of like dolls who represent me at different stages. And it was quite, because some of it was in VR, some of it was in music videos, some of it was in all different places. And to get it all in like 90 minutes, to have them all appear, and it's all by different people and all with different color palettes and emotional, hopefully, expression. That, it was, for me, it was quite moving to see them all back to back, like the avatars go through the film, you know.
Yeah, and yet it feels like a gift for us. I mean, very personal experience for you, but a gift for us. How did you sort of go about filling out the middle and creating a timeline through the music that you've created across your life with such a specific beginning and end point? How did you go about selecting certain songs across your music career that would best tell the story?
That's a very good question. I think it's mostly with instinct, and sometimes, because I've obviously been I'm like an old punk. So from the age of 14, I've been writing set lists, So you kind of trying to create a curve that works, like a structure that works. So that obviously is a big thing. But then you pick songs like Isabel, maybe because of the plant reference, and because there was this whole plant theme, utopia with flowers, both alien, imaginary, and real ones. And then with the mushrooms of Fossora. So there was sort of like a plant theme also through the whole thing. I think I started, because obviously with Vulnicura it was so chronological, I decided to have it in completely the correct same order as I wrote the songs. And I trusted that the fans, they have Vulnicura, then Utopia and Fossora. Obviously, if you play them back to back, there is a certain storytelling or timeline.
Yeah.
But I kind of shuffled them up for the gig, whatever makes the show work,
Yeah.
Like there is. And then I was maybe thinking also more about the emotional story of, in the beginning, you have riddles to solve and you're stuck in something. And then in the middle, hopefully you attempt to solve it. And then, with the choir pieces. And then you come out the other end with hopefully some sort of solutions. I mean, not till the end of your life, but just at least for now.
Some resolution, yeah. Some idea of where you might want to go next or what's important.
Exactly. Yeah. So to try to create that sort of emotional curve or catharsis somehow, yeah.
I'd love to know that as you're making the music, at what point does your creativity start to wander? And do you start to think, this could be something interesting in the technology space. This could be something where I could perform in a unique environment, or I could incorporate other collaborators to build something else than just the music I'm making here. At what point does that start to sort of happen during your writing process or creation?
Yeah, it's a super good question. I usually start, because I always write like one song a month, one every 2 months. Doesn't matter what happens in my life. It's kind of like the full moon, or it's just like a rhythm, because I've been doing it so long. So I think the minute when I release an album, part of me is like so relieved and so bored with the subject matter that I'm like super excited to do something complete opposite. So I start gathering like info or research or whatever tech is going on as well. But then, just to contradict what I just said,
please.
I'm also really get bored very easily. So I never want to do it twice the same.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I will first write all the songs, like I did Vulnicura, just with string arrangement songs. And then I do the next stage. Or sometimes I will start the complete other, like with Utopia, maybe on flute arrangements, doing flute arrangements for a year, and rehearsing with flute players in my cabin every Friday, and with us driving there and gelling together as a group and just becoming really good friends. And that becomes sort of the heart of an album. And then afterwards, I will stick other stuff on top. So I think, so it's a mix of what's going on, I try not to be like, so I'll bring you the third angle, just to contradict the other two. I try also not be like directed by technology. I want craft to be, the soul comes first, and the craft is to assist the soul to express yourself.
I'm so glad you said that, because I've always thought that you really have.
Yeah.
I felt that you and maybe a very small selection of your peers in an important time found a way to allow technology to find its voice in a different way. I felt like we were trying to use technology to enhance our voice. And I always wanted to ask you, like, if this resonates with you, you were searching for the voice in the technology to see what it had to say.
Yeah, I think the way I look at it is we are all such submarines, and we have so many things we can express, but also a lot of things that all of us just can't express, that's unexpressible. Some of it, thank God, we can express through music, not necessarily even if we are musicians or not, just by dancing or listening to music at home or whatever. But then I've always looked at technology as this kind of like a magic key, that it can reach the spots that the other two can't, When the touch screen came, it was like oh my God, I can map out musicology. I wish I had 3D screen when I was in music school, and I could see, how counterpoint works in physics. It's a gravity-driven thing, not like something you read in this thick book, So I think sometimes technology, obviously we made technology, and sometimes it catches up with us and allows us to map something that actually is very, it's like drinking water. That makes it easier. Like I've said many times, like I was so happy when the laptop came, and then finally when you could record on mountaintops while I'm hiking, you could bring your phone with you. I'm like, wow, finally technology I can go to nature.
Yeah.
And my studio is in nature, not in some stuffed studio with foam and no windows in middle of a city, So I think technology, we are slowly getting more closer to the ideal way how we want to express ourselves.
One of the things that's been so inspiring about your music, in particular in the last sort of, as you said, 11 to 15 years, is as you've gone back and immersed yourself in the environment you were born in, the nature that surrounds you. You brought technology with you, you never rejected it. You've combined the two and found a beautiful harmony between these two things in your music and in your performance. How has that changed your relationship with technology, bringing the technology back into nature?
Well, I work a lot. Like I just to be really functional answer to you is, I started using Pro Tools in 99. I started using Sibelius software in 99. So I have for 25 years been doing, like, I can have my laptop in the middle of nowhere and work on a really complex music arrangement with nothing there, I can work on a song for months, just go really detail-y, and that's amazing. And I've gotten really into other softwares like Melodyne, which I really lost the plot because I just went bonkers for it.
Yeah.
And for me, nature is so much just about being there. It's about the space. For me, it doesn't have to be like climb the Himalayas, or as much as I respect people who do that. Like the sort of high risk, high effort nature experiences. For me, I get most out of it just to be there, just to feel the oxygen and feel the energy and feel the wind and be next to a lake. And
when you sit down and you're working on something, if you're in tune, does it give you melodies? Does it give you sound? Does it give you things in real time? And then you can try to replicate through the technology and ultimately collaborate with nature as you're inside it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been hiking and writing melodies, walking since I was 6. So, at the time I didn't realize what I was doing because, kids are kids. But so, yeah, definitely it's very, it's a very big part of what I do. And it wasn't until I grew older that I understood, reading about aboriginals and the song lines, and that there's a melody for each canyon and for each hill, and that it reflects, everybody writes the same melody in this canyon and a different kind of melody on that canyon. So there it definitely is some sort of a, biomorphic sort of thing going on. But also that's not the only way to approach nature, to hike. I think there are so many other ways. I think the space, I live on a beach in Reykjavik. And for me, it's not even so much even about the ocean. It's just that there is 50% of my horizon is space.
Yeah.
So I like space.
Yeah.
So and I actually read some biographies of composers, and a lot of them end up, even though they make music that's insane, they often end up moving like away from cities and into. Just to get space, just to have silence, so their sort of internal musical monologue can grow. I love, for example, doing arrangements or mixing albums in cities, because that's more like afterwards. That's more the dialogue or the sort of,
detail work. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love people. I don't want to sound like I've got not a total monk, But I also have amazing friends and going to cities and dancing, and so both.
It's a balance of the both.
I think balance of the both.
Do you have an earliest musical memory? Do you have something that was formative for you as a young person, as a very young person, that you can actually trace this curiosity in the way that you've moved through music and fallen in love and collaborated in this space, that in a way it sets you on this path?
I mean, I think it's a mixture of memories. And I'm not sure what exactly came first. I definitely remember in my family, when we would go on a vehicle, like drive or boats, I would just start humming. And it was very internal, but people would sort of go quiet and listen. And I could tell that people found it relaxing, you know. And also when I was in school buses, when we would drive on trips, the kids would like ask me to just hum. You know, it wasn't like singing loud. It was more sort of internal humming. Or when the first, drip coffee machine came, they had this kind of sound to it. My friend, she would tell me that I would like sit next to it and like sing along with the sounds, you know. So I definitely I like sort of internal sounds, you know.
For someone who is so identifiable as a unique individual in the arts, you are an incredible collaborator. And I know that you love to collaborate because it goes wide and it goes vast and there's a lot of inspiration in that. What's important towards setting the right tone for collaboration?
Well, I think it's a different story with every person. I think I've been super blessed because in my 20s and 30s, I collaborated with a lot of people. I mean, and before that, when I was in bands, that was very like a 6-people marriage sort of thing, which I did for 10 years. And I loved that, you know. But then when I was done, I was like, done. But I have to say, last 15 years, I've grown to fewer relationships and deeper, you know. And the relationship I have like with James Murray, which is, he is the co-visual director of all my visuals with me. And it's a conversation that we always have, you know. And then also I have to say with Alejandra, with Arca, that too was pretty epic. But I think you try to read or pick up by some sort of Morse code the other person, where they're growing or where they have hindrances. And they probably, in a sort of clairvoyant way, hopefully do the same thing weirdly for you, because it's one of these weird things. If you hit like that coordinate, it's really generous both ways. Like it flows back and forth, and it's sort of like an equal thing, and it gives you energy, it doesn't take energy. So it's like a feeling, you know? And then I think it's super important to every 2 or 3 years, you have to rename the relationship and redefine what it is, because everybody changes all the time, and so you have to grow like next to each other, hopefully. And sometimes not, you know. Sometimes it has a clock attached to it, you know. And then that's also a beautiful thing, you know.
Seasons, yeah.
Exactly. So I'm not saying I always succeed, but I do try to be sort of, you know, graceful in understanding the nature of the beast and being hands off and just letting it be and evolve into what it is, you know. And trust it too, right?
Yeah, trust is the key word, I think, isn't it? And like you said, you know, even early on in your career, when you stepped into your own solo experience, you seemed open to trust even then. It really didn't seem like you were leading with ego.
Thank you. That's very kind. I mean, I was very protected for 10 years in like bands and with bad taste in Iceland. They were all older than me, and they would sort of protect me. And then I also have to do a shout out to Derek Burkitt and One Little Independent, because they have basically, he's been my record company and manager since I was 16. And a lot of my musician friends, they go through like terrors and horrors of all kind of things exploding and deals and da-da-da. I never had to do that. And I always had full creative control. I never once, you know, had to ask for, you know, get okayed from somewhere.
Creative control. I know it's an obvious statement, but is that sentence number 1 on page number 1? Is that kind of ultimately the most important thing to strive for, is to be left alone?
Yes. I mean, I say, if you don't compromise to your vision, I think it's better in the long run. It's maybe harder in the beginning, but it's easier in the long run. Because I'm getting fruits now when I'm older from a lot of stuff just because I stuck to my guns.
Setting boundaries early on.
Yeah. And integrity, I have to say, it does pay.
It does pay, yeah.
In the long run.
Yeah.
Not right away,
Yeah.
but definitely if you're in it for the long run, that's the way to go, I think, to really just listen to your inner voice and really follow that, your instinct, yeah.
When we met the first time in 1996, I feel like you were on the verge of something that most people aspire to, which is this idea of international recognition and success and fame and all these words that get kicked around. And over time, we've learned that there's a lot of potentially destructive attachments to those terms. But you made a conscious decision to reject that, to not immerse yourself in those terms and to move somewhere else. Was that a reaction in many respects to what we're talking about, the idea of wanting to ensure that you protect your integrity and that the compromise is limited to nothing?
I think so, part of it. I think also I was blessed because I had in Iceland, even though we were just a tiny company, very DIY, we were very self-sufficient, and that does change everything because if everything goes wrong, you just do records in Reykjavik, So I knew what it felt like to not have to compromise, and that the industry follows the music, not the music follows the industry. I knew what that felt like and looked like. So I was very excited when I came here first and was invited to all the A-list parties. But then I just knew, wow, that's amazing. I feel very blessed that I could taste this. But I knew if I would have kept writing songs in that environment with paparazzi on my windows and people following me around, I would have probably done it because I'm sort of a bit greedy. The more songs, the better. That's what runs me, makes my clock tick. But then I just couldn't really work in that environment. So I accidentally went to Spain and did Homogenic. And then I was just like, yes, okay, yeah, I get the distance. So I can go back to what my life was before, where I live in places like Iceland or nature, and then I just visit the city just for a short time, and then I sneak out again. But that's just me. I think it's also what you're used to, or oxygen levels. Did you know, in Reykjavik, there's 40% oxygen in the air. In a city like New York, there's only 20%.
Yeah.
So you're actually it's what you're used to, I think, as well,
Yeah. You did remove yourself and began this beautiful journey where it seemed that every time you showed up, it was very deliberate and thoughtful. And I want to be here. I don't have to be here. I want to be here. I want to release this music. I want to play these songs. But a quote really jumped out to me recently. I don't like to requote, but I wanted just a further thought on this if you can find one where you said, that regardless of that fame does have a destructive quality to it, and that looking through your life, it's not healthy to raise a family or to try to have relationships in a fame-based environment. And I just sort of wondered, for people who still strive for that, really from your perspective, what is destructive about it?
Well, I only did it for so short, and it's so long ago, I hardly remember what it's like. I'm very blessed in Iceland because I just go, literally in my pajamas to my local food shop, and nobody gives a fuck. So I've lived that life for 20 years. So my cafe, my swimming pool, I got my little life going. And in Iceland, we just think, that influencer stuff is silly. So that also does help. And also I have always insisted, and my fans have been super, super patient with me. And I've seen sometimes they chat online. I don't check it often, but when I check it, I see they're like, oh, don't bother her.
Yeah.
She wants to, okay.
I love that as well. I love that you set those boundaries and people listen and respect them.
Yeah, and I think it's actually cool that we get all kind of celebrities. We get celebrities who want to be bothered 24/7 and they're really toxic and delicious, I love these guys too, And there's other very introvert, eccentric celebrities who want to just left in peace. And I think this should be the whole range, I'm all for diversity,
One of the things I love about Cornucopia, the performance and the music is beautiful, but this idea of connecting to the root of things, fungi being a key image that flows throughout this beautiful performance. I know you did a voiceover as well, and you contributed to a documentary, which must have been an amazing way to fulfill your David Attenborough dreams.
Yeah, goals.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I just wonder sort of when that image came to mind, or that idea of life at its purest form, kind of spreading in a very fast and having this kind of very kind of unspoken influence over everything. Where were you when that inspiration struck you from a creative point of view?
I think it always starts from sound for me. And I think when I started on Utopia, it was all about flutes and element air and no earth at all. So I lived in sort of this environment of flutes, and I did Utopia with Arca, and we were like, okay, synths sounds like flutes, so flutes sounds like synths, and air, 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 air. And then after 3 years of that, I was like, okay, I've had it with air. And COVID happened, so it was like, okay, let's do soil. Yeah. So it came from like really, okay, just being in for 2 years in Reykjavik and just loving it, because thankfully we didn't have to change our lifestyle that much in COVID. And so it just felt like digging your feet into the ground and just really like, so I ended up doing like a year of bass clarinet arrangements, 6 bass clarinets. And then Heba Kadri, who is my mixing engineer and mastering engineer, like genius, she was graceful enough to fly to Iceland in the middle of COVID. And she basically set up in my basement, like, okay, she's like, okay, we're going underground, funky, Heba, let's do this. And she's like, got it. So we just mixed the whole album really like the opposite to Utopia, which is very like sci-fi city in the clouds sort of. Yeah.
What's one really memorable thing that you took from or you learned from getting to know Sir David Attenborough and spending time with him?
I remember we once had to film, and we were like in the basement of the Natural History Museum, and something broke, some equipment, and we had to sit there for hours for it getting fixed. And he just sat there, and obviously like double my age, you know. And I was like basically drained, and I was like so exhausted. It just got more and more exhausted as we had to wait, you know. And just looked at him, and I was like, fucking hell. He just basically, I could just imagine him in Papua New Guinea do the same thing. Yeah. Because I bet the equipment were always breaking. Yeah. You had to wait for like 7 hours for a bird of paradise or whatever. He basically just shut off, and it was just closed eyes. And then there was like action, and then he just came out with the most beautiful paragraph, fully formed sentence, no script that I've ever heard. I was like, what the fuck? Wow. It was just a superpower of the orator, you know. And it's that rappers are the same, right? They just can memorize hours of raps. Right?
Absolutely.
It's like a superpower.
I wonder how he remains hopeful, being such a voice of reason in a time of irrationality. Did you get a sense of that from him, like really what motivates him and something that inspired you ultimately to lead to a place like Cornucopia, because you've carried on the hopefulness that he instills in his work through this. I feel very hopeful at the end of Cornucopia.
I mean, it is important for me, and I do like films and books and philosophers, and I am attracted to people who have the same theory, you know, and the conversations I was lucky to have that I hopefully one day will publish, that I had with Maggie Nelson and Levin Won Lee and Timothy Morton and Ocean Wong. You know, it is, yes, you go into the deep, dark shit for real, but then you come out the other end with a solution. I mean, it doesn't have to be like some black and white literal solution, but I don't know, maybe it's being oldest of 6 siblings and also having kids when I'm 20. You have to see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's where we're heading, you know.
I also wonder whether curiosity has helped you, because you have this infinite curiosity, and I've only learned in later life that curiosity is actually a really good counterpoint to fear. Mm-hmm. That the things that I'm most fearful of, I have to immerse myself in actually and be more curious rather than tuck myself away and try to create some illusion of protection.
Yeah, I think so. And then also as a singer, it is very real to be a singer. And it's like you know, you're your own musical instrument, and you go on tour, and whatever you got at that time, in space, that's all you got. And then you got to like, oh, now I got a lot of this. Oh, I actually got not too much of this. So you just have to be reading yourself all the time. Like, how am I going to do the show? And then you go away, do an album, and you come back 3 years later, fly across the world, and you've got another totally different instrument that you have to read all over again. So it's sort of in a good way, as much as I've been pissed off sometimes because I can't eat everything that most people can eat and stuff. I always have to sort of be able to sing. But it also does keep me on my toes of, like just being in the moment. I can't go in the spare tank and spare tank and spare tank. I always have to just stop everything and charge every time, because otherwise if I lose my voice, the tour is finished.
I'm so glad you brought up your voice. I'm going to nerd out so hard on your voice right now.
Okay.
We have a rare moment on camera, and I'm going to try to serve every fan
All right.
at the best I can. Starting with the most obvious question, which from humming to realizing you had a voice that was an instrument, that was something that made you feel emotional and others felt the same way. Do you remember a moment or approximately when your voice presented itself to you, or you found it?
I think it was super gradual. I mean, and super like, I'm like a triple Scorpio, whatever. So it's super internal, introvert energy. So when I was always singing and hiking when I was a kid, well, it wasn't called hiking, it was called walking then. And it's like a posh.
It wasn't an activity, it was just a necessity.
It was like a luxury tourism thing. Yeah. So then I was thinking, I'm going to share this with nobody. And then I was actually a rhythm nerd. I'm like a drummer. I'm probably a frustrated drummer. That's probably all there is to me. And then I was like in some punk band when I was 14, and I wanted to play the drums, and there was basically nobody who would like sing. So I was just like, okay, I'll do it, because I didn't like the attention, but it did accidentally. I had learned on flute for like, I don't know, 6-7 years then. So all the breathing was probably, my lungs were probably not bad, They weren't trained, even though my voice was rubbish. My lungs were good. Yeah. So after all that flute playing. So yeah, it was super gradual. I don't think there was like a moment. I mean, it was more philosophical, maybe being 18-year-old, we were in a Cook, the punk band, touring Europe in some caravan, not having no money to eat for days, and driving to West Berlin, sleeping in squats. What I'm trying to say, everything is at stake. Philosophically, that urgency of you have to express yourself, whatever it takes,
I've always wondered how phrasing comes to you, because I never feel like you're choosing the obvious space. To me, it almost feels like I'm listening to Eric Dolphy or John Coltrane or something, but I just wonder sort of where the idea of positioning these phrases and these words and finding the emotional space to perform comes from.
I'm blushing now. You probably can't tell with this
I'm sorry, it's
Saturn Sprite.
It's the truth.
Outfit is hiding my
I'm just trying to put more stars in the galaxy
Zane.
right now.
Yeah. I mean, thanks. That's very flattering to compare me to those guys. I actually don't know. I'm trying not to pretend to be humble, but just be real with you. When you ad-lib, I don't know where it comes from. I actually don't know. And that's the beauty of ad-libs, right?
Yeah.
I have no idea where they come from.
So if you're not thinking about where you place things and what a performance in conventional terms is, does that heighten the emotion when you hear your own performance back? Because it's revealing itself to you for the first time, like it is to us.
Sorry, my mind is so full of cornucopia right now. Obviously, it was a surprise to me that it took like a year to do the post-production. So we were doing things like color correction, making sure all the animation was right. We had displayed everything on like 24 screens, so closing and opening, and they're designed to be like high res, low res. Then we projected everything, and we'd done so much work just getting this all right. And then you film that, and it all just becomes like brown sauce. So you have to start all over again, going through all the color correction and make sure that it was the way you intended first. So I did get, when I was watching it, my mind was a lot in this kind of universe. obviously I had been singing those songs for a few years by then, like I told you in the beginning of the interview, a lot of the music was it was from 10 years period, so maybe I wasn't that focused on it, but I do think maybe I'm programmed to separate like the left brain, right brain kind of thing, that my melody and my voice, I'm super like protective of it, to not let, just that it's instinct run and driven, and not to let any analyzing or scrutinizing energy on that. It just is what it is, But I can I can nerd out on like bass, sub-bass and animation and reverbs and, like flute.
He turned me down, I then down-turned another, who then down-turned his.
When you're actually making the music in real time, when you're working on a song like Future Forever and you're listening back to it through the monitor, can you let it go if you don't feel it? Can you actually keep it in the left brain and let it go for the people? Or does it have to be peak right brain for you to feel comfortable for us to hear it?
I think that's one of the beauties of getting older, is that you become more like, like the ceiling of a cathedral, there's like 1,000 pieces and it takes 2 years to make, So you're trying to get the whole. So it's a very sort of feminine, sort of cohesive energy that you're making sure all the pieces are there. So I think with this Cornucopia Beast, because I was part of everything. I was like there when it was mixed. I was there when it was mastered. I was there when it was edited. I was in every single process of this. So what I'm really trying to think is holistic, And then there is the other side of me, which is more about get that guttural, emotional take, like keep it real. I think maybe cornucopia, it's also in the name, isn't it, cornucopia? The idea of plenty, and it is plenty, and it's an answer to, the environmental problems we're in, to the patriarchy. It's a reply to a lot of problems. And the reply is, don't stop there. We have plenty. We have solutions. We can start all over again. We can go to an island with flutes and children, and we will maybe lose a lot of our species, but biology is strong enough to mutate and create new creatures that will survive, and it's an optimistic thing, and biology can handle it, So it's a strange kind of Dadaist farce-like comedy sort of statement on the sort of all the post-apocalyptic stuff that is out there. It's a post-optimistic creature thing, cornucopia. And so I fought for it. That's sort of where my heart was in defending that, that we did have the wound was shining. We did have the reveal of the rawness, but there was the healing. There was the other options. We have a choice. We can still create a new Paris Climate Accord and follow it this time around, So that's sort of where my energy was. And also protecting everybody, not just the animators, but also the people who wrote the music with me and the musicians. And so it is a very sort of, I would say it's more feminine energy, sort of to be a director in that way, I think.
It was so encouraging also to see a mature and experienced grown-up join a kid up on stage. Obviously, I'm referring to Greta Thunberg, and the fact that you incorporated her into the live show through video was very moving. And I sort of wondered what your experience was like when you met her, and what the inspiration was beyond the elaborating and emphasizing the point of Cornucopia, but including her in this show.
Yeah, it was sort of insane because we contacted her beginning of 2019, and we had the premiere in May 2019 in New York. And she sent us the recording, and then COVID happened and everything, and we were like, oh, should we still include it in the show? We don't know. And we watched it again and I was like, oh, okay, it's even more relevant now. I am doing this project now in a month in Paris, and I am trying to pass the mic over to create some, moment and pass the mic to Gen Zers. And because I've been working with them activists in Iceland a lot, and they do have a different perspective than my generation, for real. And it is sort of like, okay, the damage is done. How do you live inside it, So it is more like, Timothy Morton philosophy. It's like, the apocalypse has already happened. So how are we going to survive in it, So it is more from that, protecting biodiversity, more stuff like that. Than standing, maybe the Gen Xers were standing and punk, like screaming, pointing fingers at people who own factories. And if I scream louder, they will stop. That's like not, that's not going to work anymore. And it's more about trying to bring solutions, and trying to help. Everybody wants to help. We are all guilt-ridden. We're all 7 billion of people paralyzed with guilt of what we did to the planet. Yep. We don't have to even discuss that one. Yep. So we can't add to that sort of guilt factor. I think it's more about helping to go to court. How can I click? How can I write new laws that can change the system from inside? And the Gen Zers are saying, old rich people, and saying, listen, you're ruining my nature. Yeah. So those cases, weirdly enough, they're winning. So I think we have to think about it from that point of view. Now it's a tilt, It's a tilt, and I try to be humble and listen to them.
Last time we spoke, you were talking about some pretty significant change going on in your life, and it resonated with me. Your youngest was getting ready to leave. There's just a lot of change. How is life in the last sort of year and some change since we spoke? And you've settled into that new life, the 3.0. How is life now?
I actually like it. Once that now that it's sort of happened, before you think you're not gonna overcome it, but then, so I actually sort of like it now. And I think it's sort of aligned. I think nature knows what she's doing as usual. And you become more of a homebody, and you need few things, and you want more simple life in nature. And the most flamboyant part is sort of more in your work or sort of what you're creating. So maybe not so much in the sort of everyday life, things have gone a bit simpler. And I understand that, and it's a craving, that's a good news. Yeah. You want it now, but on every level, both with energy levels and with family and with friends and with the amount you've seen the world, the explosion, the cosmic explosions that happen now probably happen in your living room, in your bedroom, So it's sort of more, I would say I'm up for it.
Are you creating, obviously I feel like you're always creating, so stupid question, but what are you creating is a better question at the moment. Now that Cornucopia is done and we have this amazing ability to watch it on Apple, you said you're restless, so where did you go next?
Well, it's always a bit hard to say in the beginning, but and sometimes it's like I'm solving a murder mystery myself. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I would say in some ways it's the opposite to Cornucopia. I knew when I did Cornucopia, I did say to Derek, my manager, and everyone, okay, I'm gonna go as theatrical as possible now. Sorry guys, it's gonna be ridiculous. Just sorry, but I will promise you I will only do it once. Yeah. That's it. Digital theater, tick. Yeah. Next. Yeah. So I don't have a craving to do even more. I wanna. It goes to some other dimension. I like even more writing in Iceland. I do like Iceland still. I probably like it even more now.
No more digital theatre. But what a way to go out. And I think about all the steps you've taken to get to a place like Cornucopia, from the shed to more conventional spaces, but you still made them your own. I think about, some of these experiences that have probably informed Cornucopia, and maybe what some of your favorite moments were that are out of barns and arenas and festivals, but just the ones you remember that really felt the environment and your performance were far more in sync?
Yeah, I think Cornucopia actually came from working in 360, both sound and visuals, because we were programming for Vulnicura, all the VR stuff.
Yeah.
And then it basically, in a way, the shortest version I could describe Cornucopia is it's taking it out of the VR headset, 21st century like headset, and putting it on like a 19th century stage.
Yeah.
So that was sort of the idea with Cornucopia in a way, because I understood after a while, because we had Björk Digital, which we took to like 20 cities with a lot of headsets and everything. And it was beautiful to watch everybody get really like, into it and blah, blah, blah. But it was also an element of, I think emotionally it fitted Vulnicura, because it was like sad and lonely. So it's like you're alone inside the headset, but to bring it out of it Utopia was kind of like, okay, it's a communal energy. So I think Cornucopia was also like an attempt to create that sort of situation. And coming back to your question, I mean, obviously the favorites are always the one where you don't expect, like when there's like this like New Year's Eve, you expect the best of the best of the best of the best. That often doesn't happen.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's the really sneaky, humble ones that are actually the peaks, So I don't know. I mean, there was some punk, like crowd-serving, crazy ones, for real. A lot of, when I started doing all the outdoor festival by oceans, amphitheaters, and you're outside, and there's like fireworks, and I always, all the way from the 90s, I always asked if I could play in Twilight. Even though I was headlining, I still wanted to play in the Twilight, because I love that time and with fireworks, and it's just something magic, and people just transform. So that energy is so precious, and the hooliganism of Homogenic was pretty mental. It was meant to be brutal, and it was.
Yeah.
And then Vespertine was the total opposite, where it was all silk gloves and very quiet, and opera houses and gentle and sensitivity. And I don't know, there's been a lot of peaks. Also, we were like crying on Cornucopia, There's been a lot of backstage moment when we all look at each other, and because there's one thing looking at Cornucopia from the audience, but also from the back with all the screens, and looking in the eyes of the Berger, who did the whole thing with me, and the flute girls, you just have these kind of moments where you're just like crying. Yeah, I mean, but I think a lot of people who work on stage, like people in theater and in dance, and it's a luxury to do, stage is fun. It forces you in the moment.
I just remember when I fell in love with your music and you as an artist, you were the club kid. You were the one going to the clubs and bringing that energy into your music. And now you're sort of, conducting the party and DJing as well. How much, just simple question, how much fun has that been, getting behind the decks and, move the room and turn people on to things as well, surprise people with your selections?
Yeah, I mean, it's a surprise to me. If you would have asked me that I would now be like DJing, I would be like, for the crowds I'm gonna do tonight, I would have, 20 years ago, I would have been no way.
Yeah.
That's not what I expected. But I do have to say, and the older I get, I feel more and more strong about this. We have to defend our right to dance. You look at tango people and salsa people, they're dancing till they're in the 90s. I think it's really, and I think our generation, even though we're gonna look clumsy and weird, I'm gonna be techno raving till I'm 90. Sorry guys, breaking news. But I think for me, even when I was living in London in the 90s, I'm not really weird. I like daytime raving. So actually now we have this, because we run this record shop in Iceland called Smekklisa, Bad Taste. It's like the rough trade of Iceland or something. And we basically, one way to getting people back into record shops, which we could do a whole just interview episode just on that, the life of record shops, getting the community there and everything. We started DJing on full moon, and we started 5, and then we DJ till like 8 or 9. So it's like daytime raving for all generations. And usually it's like 4 hours. So it's like 1 hour, just really serious classical music, weird, out there, avant-garde, whatever. And then the BPM goes up, and it goes up a bit. And the last person who plays, they just have to go mental. And then you dance, drink champagne. You're in bed.
I can't wait to go to one of those. I'll be in bed by midnight. It's perfect.
We've been so blessed. We've had guests. And last year, like Sega Bodega came, Arca, Mika Levy, Moonsing. We've had really good guests. Hi-Fi, all the kids from a subcult side project.
Yeah.
So we're getting these kind of sneaky little guests. And it's all for free. It's all voluntary. So we're just keeping that energy alive and just dancing. I love how Rough Trade have done it, and I think we're all trying to solve the same riddle because we need the community. We want to hang out and listen to the records we bought together, and the community. We need to defend the community. I think it's important.
We go to that hidden place. We'll go to a hidden place.